Hey everybody, I'm talking about the four today and some other little election news in there. Maine question one rejected their new marriage law by a 57 to 43% margin, by 14 points in 2009. Maryland, like Maine and Washington, passed a Civil Marriage and Religious Freedom Act that was put on the ballot promptly by opponents of marriage equality. Those measures are Question 6 and Referendum 74. Minnesota in May 2011 needed a simple majority in both chambers of the legislature. It passed 37 to 27 in the Senate and 70 to 62% in the House to pass a constitutional amendment to the people resolving the question of gay marriage. Like North Carolina, they had a statute in place regardless, and the statute is being challenged by a case called Benderson versus Alvarez and could be overturned. The Catholic Diocese in Minnesota said that this is the reason why we needed Amendment 1 in Minnesota because of that challenge. Something of note also is gay Senator Dibble said, "I can't see how anyone would think that my marriage would hurt someone else." Representative Steve Simon in the House said, "How many gay people does God have to make before we realize he wants them around?" That video went viral. Now, first, let me give a shout out to Brian Silva and Marriage Equality USA. While they were in Maryland and in Maine, I was in Ohio hoping to turn the state blue so we can keep our president and not outsource his job. Brian, we thank you and we love you. Thank you so much for what you and your team did. Also, a shout out to Michael Equality Sabatino. He pointed folks to the Marriage Equality USA website where we could make calls and urge people to vote on the side of equality. I was unable to make the calls at the time. I was very busy, but you can imagine that prior to this, marriage equality had always been seen as a shutout. It was just blown out at 86 to 14 in Mississippi. Arkansas, they passed one. Kentucky, 11 states in 2004 passed marriage amendments so that marriage will be between one man and one woman, or at least legal marriage would. Nevada passed one. Montana passed a ballot initiative. Some of these were done by ballot initiatives and statutes. Some were done by constitutional amendments. But we saw in North Carolina, theirs passed with 61% of the vote, and in Maine, with a prior question one in May in 2009, with 53% of the vote. And before that, the year before. In 2008, we saw Prop 8 pass with a 52% of the vote, which Proposition 22 passed with 62% of the vote. So it jumped down 10 points to have, instead of a 24-point average or margin, it jumped down to a 4% margin or 4-point margin. So if you're anything like me, you are a little bit cynical about the polls showing that the support of the amendments and the questions passing. But I agree with Brian Brown of NAM on one thing, and this may be the very only thing that I agree with him on, is that the only polls that matter is after they've closed and the votes have been counted. I was hoping for one or two, maybe possibly Maryland and Washington upholding theirs. Washington had also expanded domestic partnerships in 2009, the same year that marriage equality was rejected in Maine. But time had passed and education had been done. There were a lot of debates. There was a lot of work done behind this. And on November 6th, Obama's support for marriage equality may have helped people vote yes on this measure in the face of the coalition of African-American preachers saying, don't vote for him or maybe even stay at home. Now, Maine passed their 2012 question one with 52% of the vote and nearly flipped the margin in which it was defeated 3 years ago. Maine was the first to legalize marriage equality as their polls had closed, and their votes were counted sooner than Maryland's. And Maryland also passed theirs with about 52% of the vote, and their DREAM Act was upheld. They also legalized casino gambling and expanded it. 5 counties, more than likely the most populous one, gave it the majority needed to pass. Minnesota had a loophole that allowed the marriage amendment to fail, and it would have failed when the votes counted up anyway. Minnesota has it where a constitutional amendment must pass with the majority of all votes cast, setting the bar a little higher than popular vote alone. Now, next, if a voter leaves that question blank, it counts as a no vote. With nearly 53% of the vote, it was voted down, but the statute is still in place. Also of note, a voter ID Amendment 2, was also defeated. Earlier this legislative session, Governor Mark Dayton had vetoed it, and also a bill with tort reform. He also remarked that he had a dream in which the voters rejected their marriage amendment and called on Minnesota voters to reject it. Sounds like the call was answered, Governor. Other things of note: medical marijuana passed in Colorado and Washington, but it was rejected in Arkansas. Proposition 32 failed in California, and which was a good thing because it would have curbed the ability of unions to give to campaigns. Also, after finding out some of the statewide races and what happened there on the state level because of the election, Rachel Maddow had given me this information, and I Facebooked it on Pissed Off Liberal Mama, and many other liberal sites too, or pages too. What I put here is never underestimate pissed off liberals. We picked up the lower chamber, the House or General Assembly, in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Colorado. New York Senate goes to the Democrats, which puts us in control of the State House once again. Maryland and Minnesota have Democrats controlling the state houses, and there are supermajorities in Illinois and California. Republican supermajorities were gained in North Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee, but were cut in Florida, Texas, and the Arizona legislature, even though they still control the state houses. So we have more work to do in 2014. I believe that now also of note is New Hampshire has an all-lady delegation. Women also shellacked pro-life men in the elections because of the missteps that they made. And I believe Todd Aiken was replaced by Claire McCaskill. Joe Walsh booted out by Tammy Duckworth. Tammy Baldwin booted Tommy Thompson, former governor of Wisconsin, and I believe those were and Kathy Hochul unfortunately lost her race to Chris Collins, if I'm correct. But anyway, those are some of the things that are taken away with the 4 and some of the effects of the election. Have a great day, YouTube. I'll see you later.